The city of Xandria buzzed under the blanket of neon and the hum of hovercrafts zipping through the air. Amid the chaos of street vendors selling synthetic snacks and the holographic billboards flashing ads for the latest biomodifications, the crowd was blissfully unaware that they were under surveillance. In a small cafe tucked between towering skyscrapers, a man sat at the corner table sipping an espresso. He was ordinary, almost deliberately so. Average height, plain brown jacket, and a forgettable face. But there was something about his stillness, his gaze, that made him impossible to ignore. Across the street, cloaked in the shadows of a narrow alley, a pair of alien eyes watched him. Calara adjusted her holographic disguise generator, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her human form was perfect, a cascade of jet black hair, almond-shaped hazel eyes, and a soft, unassuming smile. She looked like any other woman on Earth. But beneath the facade, her true self was a tall, sinewy Xandrian, with violet skin and eyes that glimmered like molten silver. Her mission was clear: observe, infiltrate, and neutralize the target. The target was Dr. Elias Moreau, a renowned quantum physicist whose groundbreaking research into interdimensional travel had caught the attention of her people. The Xandrians had long hidden in the shadows, manipulating worlds without their knowledge, ensuring no race could rival their superiority. But Elias's work was dangerous. It threatened to expose their existence. Tonight, Calara would make contact. Her voice came through the comm implanted in her ear. Calara. The sharp tone of Commander Valtrix cut through the static. Report. She glanced at Elias through the cafe window, noting the way he absent-mindedly tapped his finger against the cup. Target is alone, preparing to engage. No mistakes, Valtrix snapped. If he even suspects you, the entire mission is compromised. Do you understand? Calara's jaw tightened. Understood. As she stepped out of the shadows, her pulse quickened. She hated this planet, the sticky air, the garish lights, the unpredictable humans. Yet, as she approached Elias's table, there was a strange knot of unease in her stomach, something she couldn't quite name. Excuse me, she said, her voice carrying a slight tremor she hadn't intended. Is this seat taken? Elias looked up, his blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that startled her. There was no hesitation, no distrust, just curiosity. Please sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Calara settled into the seat, her hands clasped around a cup of tea she didn't plan to drink. You're a physicist, aren't you? She began, her tone light but probing. Dr. Elias Moreau? His brows lifted in surprise. I didn't realize my work was so widely known. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. Well, it's not every day someone talks about bridging dimensions. It's fascinating, really. Elias leaned forward, his interest piqued. Are you familiar with quantum mechanics? Most people find it overwhelming. I've dabbled, Calara replied smoothly. Though your theories about connecting alternate realities are particularly ambitious. There was a flicker of suspicion in his gaze, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Ambition is what drives us, isn't it? Without it, we'd never reach beyond the stars. Calara felt a pang of guilt. His passion was genuine, his words unguarded. He had no idea she was here to betray him. Before she could respond, the air around them grew heavy, charged with an unnatural tension. A low hum vibrated through her comm. She stiffened. Calara, Valtrix's voice barked in her ear. There's an anomaly near your location. Possible hostiles. Stay alert. The lights in the cafe flickered. Elias's eyes darted to the window, his expression darkening. Did you feel that? He murmured. Calara nodded, her senses on high alert. She scanned the room, her gaze catching a figure in the far corner, a man with a scar running down his face, his hand twitching near his wristband. Xandrian technology. Elias rose to his feet, his voice low. Something's wrong. Calara stood as well, her instincts screaming at her to act. Stay close to me, she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. Elias blinked in confusion. What are you? Before he could finish, the scarred man bolted from his seat, a device in his hand emitting a high-pitched whine. The air cracked with energy as a pulse shot across the room, shattering the cafe's windows and sending patrons screaming into the streets. Calara grabbed Elias by the arm, pulling him out of the line of fire. Her disguise flickered briefly, the stress on her generator pushing it to its limits. Elias stared at her wide-eyed. What the hell are you? He whispered. Calara didn't answer. She shoved him into a narrow alley, her back pressed against the wall as the scarred man pursued them. Her mind raced. The mission was spiraling out of control, and now Elias knew too much. You need to trust me, she said, her voice firm despite the panic rising in her chest. If you want to survive, do exactly as I say. Elias hesitated, his gaze flicking between her and the approaching threat. Finally, he nodded. Lead the way. As they darted into the labyrinth of alleys, Calara couldn't shake the feeling that everything was unraveling, and that Elias Moreau was more than just a target. The maze of Xandria's alleys stretched endlessly, a tangle of rusted pipes, glowing graffiti, and flickering neon lights casting eerie shadows. Calara's mind raced as she dragged Elias through the chaos. The scarred man, an assassin from her own people, was gaining ground. His weapon emitted another pulse, disintegrating a street lamp just inches from them. Elias stumbled but caught himself, his breath ragged. Who is that, and why is he trying to kill us? Calara didn't respond immediately. Her Xatheran instincts screamed at her to cut ties, neutralize Elias, and disappear. Yet something inside her rebelled. She tightened her grip on his arm, pulling him into an abandoned warehouse. The hum of the assassin's weapon grew fainter as they slipped into the shadows. Calara spun around, her hand still gripping Elias's jacket. You need to stay quiet. Quiet? He hissed, his voice low but laced with fury. You pull me into this nightmare. Someone's shooting at us, and you're not even going to tell me what's going on. Calara sighed, her fingers brushing the controls on her disguise generator. The faint hum of the device faltered before it deactivated. Her human form shimmered and dissolved, revealing her true self. Violet skin, glowing silver eyes, and the sharp, angular features of a Xatheran. Elias staggered back, his face pale. You're not human. Brilliant deduction, Doctor, Calara snapped, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Now, unless you want to die, you'll listen. He pressed himself against the wall, staring at her as if she were a predator about to strike. What do you want from me? Calara hesitated, the words catching in her throat. She could end this now, fulfill her mission, and earn the favor of the Xatheran High Command. But she couldn't bring herself to do it. Not yet. Your research, she said finally. It's dangerous. It could expose my people, put the balance of the universe at risk. Elias's eyes narrowed. So what? You're here to kill me? I was, Calara admitted, her voice softening. But now, things have changed. Elias scoffed, his fear giving way to anger. What's that supposed to mean? You're an alien spy sent to assassinate me and now you're having second thoughts? It's not that simple, Calara snapped, her voice rising. She took a step closer, her glowing eyes locking onto his. You're not just some arrogant scientist meddling in things you don't understand. You're different. The weight of her confession hung in the air, but there was no time for Elias to process it. A deafening crash echoed through the warehouse as the scarred assassin burst through the door, his weapon trained on them. Calara, the assassin growled, his voice distorted through his helmet. You've compromised the mission. She stepped in front of Elias, her heart pounding. Valtrix sent you, didn't he? The assassin sneered. You were supposed to be the best, but it seems even you aren't immune to human weakness. Calara's hands balled into fists. This isn't weakness. It's understanding. The assassin didn't wait for her to finish. He fired his weapon, the pulse aimed directly at Elias. Without thinking, Calara shoved Elias to the ground, the blast grazing her shoulder. Pain seared through her, but she didn't falter. "Run!" she shouted at Elias. "I'm not leaving you!" he protested, his voice filled with unexpected defiance. Calara snarled, her Xandrian instincts roaring to life. She lunged at the assassin, her enhanced strength catching him off guard. They grappled, the air crackling with energy as their struggle sent sparks flying from the assassin's weapon. Elias stood frozen, his mind racing. He'd spent years studying theoretical physics, but nothing in his calculations had prepared him for this. A war he didn't understand, between beings he couldn't fully comprehend. Yet, as he watched Calara fight, risking her life to protect him, a surge of resolve washed over him. Spotting a rusted metal pipe nearby, Elias grabbed it and charged at the assassin. He swung with all his might, the makeshift weapon connecting with the assassin's head. The helmet cracked, and the scarred man staggered back. Calara didn't waste the opportunity. She ripped the weapon from his grasp and aimed it at him. Her hands trembled as she hesitated, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Calara," the assassin rasped, his voice weak. "You betray your own kind for a human? You're a disgrace." She hesitated, her thoughts a chaotic storm. Elias watched her, his breath caught in his throat. Finally, she lowered the weapon, her voice firm. "Get out of here. Tell Valtrix I'm done." The assassin glared at her but stumbled away, vanishing into the shadows. Elias exhaled, his legs threatening to give out beneath him. "Why didn't you kill him?" Calara turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Because I'm not who they think I am anymore." For a moment, silence filled the warehouse, broken only by the distant hum of the city. "So what now?" Elias asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Calara met his gaze, the conflict in her eyes burning brighter than ever. "Now we figure out how to stop them. Together." The quiet didn't last. The distant hum of the city soon gave way to a low-frequency pulse that vibrated through the walls of the warehouse. Calara's glowing silver eyes darted to the ceiling as she felt the unmistakable energy signature of a Xandrian retrieval squad. "They're coming," she muttered, her voice sharp. Elias clenched his fists. "How many?" Calara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Too many. They'll level this building if it means getting to me, or you." Elias swallowed hard. The absurdity of his situation hit him again like a freight train. 2 hours ago, he'd been tinkering with energy equations in his lab. Now he was being hunted by aliens, all because of the woman, no, alien, standing in front of him. But he didn't have time to question any of it. Calara grabbed his wrist, pulling him deeper into the maze of the warehouse. "There's an old maglev shaft near here. If we can reach it, we might escape the city undetected." "Might?" Elias asked, his tone incredulous. "I'd feel better with a plan that didn't involve gambling with our lives." "This isn't gambling," Calara said, her voice tight. "It's survival. Do you want to live or not?" Elias couldn't argue with that. The maglev shaft was exactly as Calara described. An abandoned vertical tunnel running through the heart of the city. It had been shut down decades ago, a relic of an age when humans still dreamed of efficient mass transit. Now, it was a gaping chasm, its walls lined with decaying tech and debris. "We'll climb," Calara said, inspecting the rusty metal rungs bolted into the wall. "It leads to an underground network. From there we can get to safety." Elias looked at the rungs, then at her. "You're kidding, right? Those things are older than I am. They'll snap if we put any weight on them." Calara smirked. "Then don't fall." Before Elias could protest further, a deafening roar echoed behind them. The Zatharan squad had arrived. Blue streaks of plasma fire lit up the corridor as Calara shoved Elias toward the shaft. "Go!" she shouted, returning fire with the weapon she'd taken from the assassin. Elias gritted his teeth, grabbed the first rung and started climbing. The metal creaked under his weight, but it held. Below him, Calara fired with precision, each shot buying them precious seconds. As Elias climbed, the reality of what she was sacrificing for him struck him harder than any plasma bolt ever could. She was defying her people, risking her life, all for a man she'd been sent to kill. Why? The question gnawed at him, but he didn't have time to dwell on it. The rungs groaned ominously, and a piece of the wall crumbled, nearly sending him plummeting. He looked down just in time to see Calara leap onto the ladder below him, her movements impossibly swift. "Keep moving!" she barked. They climbed higher and higher, the sounds of the squad fading as they entered the shaft's upper reaches. Finally, they emerged into a cavernous underground facility. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and stagnant water, but it was quiet. Too quiet. "Are we safe?" Elias asked, his voice echoing. Calara shook her head. "Not for long. They'll track us eventually." Elias slumped against a wall, his body trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. "This is insane," he muttered. "You could have left me. Why didn't you?" Calara hesitated, her expression unreadable. Then she sat down beside him, her voice softer than he'd ever heard it. "Because I see the truth now. You're not just some threat to the galaxy, you're hope.